Hello viewers. Bishop Noel Jones finally leaned into the microphone, exhaled deeply, and released the sentence that sent shockwaves through the global faith community. I divorced, and here's the truth I've been hiding. His voice didn't crack, but the room did. A lifetime of expectations shattered in one breath. And as those words rippled across congregations and social platforms, one question echoed louder than any sermon he had ever preached. What pushed one of the most revered bishops of modern ministry to break his silence now? And why are insiders warning that this confession is only the beginning of a far bigger story? To understand the weight behind his admission, you have to return to the world Noel Jones was born into. Before the cameras, before the headlines, before the prestige of leading thousands, he was simply a boy growing up under the towering expectations of a family known for brilliance and influence. Being the brother of Grace Jones brought fascination, yes, but it also wrapped him in pressure long before he understood the meaning of public scrutiny. The community didn't just expect Noel to be a pastor. They expected him to be exceptional. They expected leadership, eloquence, perfection. And long before his ministry exploded across television screens and filled sanctuaries worldwide, that weight had already begun carving into his spirit. As his influence grew, so did the demands. People didn't just want a shepherd, they wanted a counselor, a celebrity, a strategist, a public figure who never stumbled, never questioned, never cracked under the strain of being human. And that pressure didn't stay at church. It followed him home, into the moments meant for rest, into relationships meant for safety, into the quiet spaces where he hoped to simply be Noel instead of Bishop Jones. Those closest to him watched as he carried a calling that consumed him piece by piece. The world saw power. They never saw the sleepless nights. They heard the sermons. They never heard the private arguments. They admired the confidence. They never saw the cost. Behind the scenes, the emotional distance grew slowly, quietly. Missed dinners, cancelled plans, conversations interrupted by emergencies and appointments and crises he was expected to solve because that was his role. What looked like dedication to the public was creating a widening gap inside his home. What once felt like partnership became two separate worlds, both drifting in silence. And in those silences, something began unraveling. A marriage that once felt sacred was now suffocating beneath the pressure of an image he could no longer sustain. Yet even as everything began fracturing, Noel did what leaders often do, he pushed forward. He smiled for cameras. He preached with authority. He counseled couples whose struggles mirrored his own. And every time he delivered a sermon on love or commitment, a quiet guilt gnawed at him. How does a man guide others through storms when his own home feels like it's sinking? How does a spiritual father carry the world's burdens when he can't carry his own? Then came the moment everything shifted. It didn't happen in a shouting match or dramatic confrontation. It happened in a simple conversation at the end of an ordinary day, two people standing in the same room yet feeling miles apart. A truth unspoken for years suddenly became undeniable. They no longer recognized the versions of themselves inside the marriage. For Noel, that realization wasn't just heartbreaking. It was terrifying. He had spent decades fixing, restoring, rebuilding lives. But this he couldn't mend. He tried. Counseling. Time away. Conversations that stretched late into the night. Prayers layered over hope. But when a relationship is held together only by expectations and habit, effort becomes exhaustion. And exhaustion grows into emotional burnout, a kind leaders don't dare speak about. The facade became heavier than the reality. His smile tightened. His sermons felt harder to deliver. His spirit felt drained. He was living two lives, and neither felt sustainable. When the divorce was finalized, Noel expected pain, yes, but nothing prepared him for the public earthquake that followed. Congregations split. Supporters defended him. Critics tore him apart. Social media erupted with speculation. Some questioned his leadership. Some questioned his faith. Some questioned his right to stand behind a pulpit at all. And through every rumor, every harsh comment, every twisting of truth, he stayed silent. Not out of guilt, but out of dignity. Still, silence didn't shield him from the emotional toll. The disappointment of his congregation weighed heavier than any failure. He questioned if he should step away, if the world would ever see him as whole again, if a broken heart disqualified him from guiding others. But in this darkest valley, something unexpected happened. A small circle of trusted voices stepped in. They reminded him that authenticity is not weakness. That truth is not scandal. That even leaders bleed. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, Noel began breathing again. Then, in a private room filled with people who loved him enough to tell him the truth, he finally spoke the words he had carried for years. I divorced because I refused to die emotionally in a marriage both of us had already lost. The room fell silent, not from shock, but from the honesty they heard behind it. He confessed that he stayed too long because of fear. Fear of judgment. Fear of disappointing the church. Fear of breaking an image built on perfection. Fear of proving critics right. Fear of admitting that even spiritual giants are still human. But then he said the sentence that changed everything. The sentence that instantly went viral. The sentence that reframed the entire narrative. If I stayed, I would have lost myself. And God did not call me to disappear inside a marriage no one understood. In that moment, Noel Jones didn't just confess his truth. He reclaimed his life. His ministry. His humanity. And in doing so, he reminded the world that even the strongest leaders need healing.